Hey everyone, I'm Ed. Welcome back to La Victoria Productions Dirty 20. Today we're going to be talking about what makes a great long-term campaign. Long-term campaigns are really the bread and butter of D&D. When you put a group together and you decide to play a character, generally speaking, you want to play that character over a long period of time. Now, that kind of really depends on how often your group is getting together, but generally speaking, anything from 6 months to a year is a pretty decent long-term campaign. Long-term campaigns can be tough to get together, mostly because of scheduling. That really is what it comes down to. If you don't have the time, if your job keeps you really busy, or if you have family commitments, it can be really, really hard to get a long-term campaign going. In which case, a one-shot might be the kind of thing that would be good for you. And you could play a one-shot, once a month for a whole year. That wouldn't really be a long-term campaign, though, because, again, you're looking at progression. Session 0 is easily the most important element for a good long-term campaign. Session 0 is really where you discuss everything. All the way from setting, the kinds of characters that you want to play, the kind of story that you want. Maybe you want a gritty noir mystery, or perhaps you want a high fantasy wizards on broomsticks kind of thing. That's really where you get to discuss it, where you come together and decide what kind of game do we want to play. So let's say that we're going to meet Sunday around 6 p.m. at my house. And then you gather everyone around, and there's no dice, it's unlikely that you're really going to be doing any D&D playing, but this is where you're going to sit down and have these really important conversations. The number of campaigns that I have seen fall apart simply because they didn't talk about certain things. It makes it clear that Session 0 is very important. There's some really great resources out there for Session 0. We'll put some down in the comments below. But here you have to not be afraid of talking about everything. I'm talking about commitment to a time and a place. I'm talking about levels of gore and violence that some people might not be comfortable with. I'm even talking about snacks that you might bring to the gaming session. Is it okay? Is it okay for people to order food, to drink? All of these things have to be discussed at Session 0. So one of the really important elements of a long-term campaign, and it's honestly something that I still struggle with, and I would love to hear people's opinions in the comments below, but one of the things that is really tough is finding a reason why the group is playing together. It's very common when people decide the kind of character that they want to play, that they're a toughened lone wolf. And that's cool in a movie where, that central character gets to, be the main character. But in a game like D&D where you're collaboratively storytelling, it's really important to have a reason why the party goes and does things together. So, generally speaking, you'll have probably heard these if you watch any other D&D videos, but the term sandboxing and railroading are central to a campaign. And what it means is that a sandbox is a world that you have seeded with locations, with characters, with plot hooks, and you present that world to your players and say, okay guys, where do you want to go? It's totally up to you. Railroading is different in that it really puts the players on a path that they can't really deviate from. It's something that's looked down on a lot in the D&D community, but I tend to think that a little bit of railroading is a good thing, and it's important. in some ways, especially, once again, getting things going. So we talked about this idea that we want to have the characters, the party, have a reason to stay together. And that could be where you do some railroading. For example, the first session, the first episode that you play, you could have the characters be witnesses to a murder. And then they're all sharing this secret, which keeps them together. Now, I'm not saying that that necessarily is a great idea. There might tend to be a lot of backstabbing and killing each other, which does happen. But generally speaking, a nice blend of sandbox and railroad, I think, makes for a really good long-term campaign. Running a long-term campaign can be a little bit daunting, especially because you have to do quite a lot of prep beforehand. And really, the more you do before you start playing, the easier it's going to be week to week. So what I mean by this is you need to, again, using the sandbox method, you need to have certain plot hooks ready for players to latch onto. So let's say, for example, that you start off in a small town and there is a mine close to that town, and there's been rumors about orcs or goblins in the mine. In that kind of situation, you're saying to the players, hey, look guys, there's something there for you to have a look at. Now again, in a sandbox, you want it to be an option, one of many. And so, for example, using some of the pre-written adventures, you can kind of place dungeons or temples or mysteries throughout the kind of world that you're setting up. One really important piece of advice that I think can really be helpful is to start small. Rather than, okay, I need to build this world and the gods and all of these things, you want to start with a town, right? And then build out from there. I'm not saying don't have an idea of other cities that are around, other nations that are around and things like that. But by starting small and having 3 to 4 possible options that the players might be interested in pursuing, what you're doing is you're letting the players discover the world as you go. And then week to week, you expand on things, right? And really, that has been some of the best advice that I've ever received in regards to running a long-term campaign. One of the most fun things about D&D as a game is that it's collaborative storytelling. And I think one of the traps that newer DMs can get into is, oh, this is my story. The players are playing in my world. And, you know, I think that that is a misconception. What you want to do is you want to share the storytelling burden. And I'm talking about anything from if somebody is into their music and they want to write a piece of music, a song that a bard might sing in your world. I mean, encourage them to do that. Writing things like campaign diaries from the point of view of one of the characters. Insanely cool. Anything that your players can add to the storytelling really is just going to make it so much more satisfying. I remember doing I was running a city campaign, and it just so happened that I'd put 3 bridges across across the river that runs through the city. And one of my players, he wrote a poem, and in it he referred to the bridges as the maiden, the mother, and the crone, which I just thought was so cool. And so, you know, boom, it's canon. Yes, that is what everyone calls them. So little things like that can really make a long-term campaign, the story that you're creating in a long-term campaign, so much better. Now, one of the things that can be tough with running a long-term campaign, particularly a great long-term campaign and one that's really successful and that everyone's really happy to play in week in and week out, is that inevitably you can reach a stage of burnout when it comes particularly to the DMs. That prep on a weekly basis, constantly coming up with, new adventures and new plot hooks, new NPCs. Although it is crazy fun and it's the reason why we do it, it can be tiring. One of the best ways that I've found to kind of combat that is have someone else run a session. Do a one-shot in the middle of your campaign where one of the players becomes the DM. And the DM can then just play a character and have fun and see it from that point of view. Trust me, once you've done that, you're going to start missing the whole, I want to prep, I want to create new characters and new NPCs and new challenges for the players. So, in summary, these are the things that I think make for a great long-term campaign. Number one, session 0. You have to make sure that you do it and do it right. Number 2 is commitment. Commitment to a time and a place to play. Number 3 is prep. Lots and lots of prep. Without it, you're going to feel like you're drowning every week or coming up with stuff that you're not entirely happy with. And number 4 is staving off that burnout. Make sure that you enjoy it and keep enjoying it, and it doesn't become a chore to have to prepare and run a D&D campaign. So, luckily, Wizards of the Coast produces some really quite cool, they call them adventures, but really they're campaigns. Whether it's Curse of Strahd, or with one of the later ones with Descent into Avernus. And they can be a way for you to feel a little bit less burdened by all the prep, because everything is there for you to run multiple sessions across multiple levels. We are going to unbox 2 products that Wizards of the Coast have brought out. One is going to be the Stranger Things box set, which is really cool, and it's, I love Stranger Things. So, and the other one is the recently released Essentials kit, which has some really, really cool things that I think you guys are going to love and are going to want to buy. As always, like, subscribe, comment down below, and, let's really kind of build up a great community of people who share resources and have great dialogue about our favorite game, D&D. Till next time, keep slaying.